Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Deep Dive. Today we're taking a trip to India to explore something pretty fascinating: corporate social responsibility, or as the cool kids call it, CSR. And for those of you joining us on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button because you won't want to miss this.
Yeah, CSR in India, it's not just a trend, it's practically woven into the law.
Oh really? Tell me more about that.
So back in 2013, India made a pretty bold move. They passed the Companies Act, and this act, well, it basically made CSR mandatory for certain companies.
So not every small business is out there launching big social impact projects.
Exactly. We're talking about the heavy hitters, the companies with a net worth of at least 500 crore rupees, or if you're thinking in US dollars, that's a cool 60 million, or companies hitting some serious turnover and profit targets. These are the ones who are legally required to dedicate at least 2% of their average net profits over the last 3 years to CSR activities.
Wow, so it's not just a suggestion, it's the law. That's
Yeah.
pretty impressive. So we're talking serious commitment here. Today we're going to be diving deep into how Indian companies have been putting this 2% rule into action over the past 5 years. From 2018 to 2023. Get ready, YouTube fam, because we're about to uncover some seriously eye-opening trends.
We're talking big numbers here. Over the past 5 years, Indian companies have invested a whopping 1.27 lakh crore rupees into CSR initiatives. Now, if you're like me and don't speak fluent lakh crore, that translates to roughly 15.47 billion US dollars.
Okay, that's some serious cash. That's not just pocket change. But has this commitment been consistent? Or has it been more like a roller coaster ride?
Actually, what's really fascinating is the consistency of growth. We're looking at a 48% overall increase over the 5-year period. So clearly, Indian businesses are becoming more and more dedicated to social good.
That's good to hear. So it sounds like Indian companies are putting their money where their mouth is.
Yeah.
But who are the real champions here? Who are the companies leading the CSR charge year after year?
Well, if we look at the top 10 spenders consistently over the past 5 years, 3 names keep popping up: Reliance Industries Limited, Tata Consultancy Services Limited, and HDFC Bank Limited. They've been in the top 10 every single year, showing some serious dedication.
That's pretty amazing. And they come from such different industries too: energy, IT, and banking. Makes you wonder, is there a connection between a company's business and where they choose to focus their CSR efforts?
You know, that's a great observation. There's definitely a trend of companies aligning their CSR activities with their core values and expertise. Like, take Reliance Industries, for example. Being a major player in the energy sector, it makes sense that they've poured resources into renewable energy projects, right?
Totally. It's
Yeah.
all about walking the walk, not just talking the talk, using your strengths to make a real impact.
Exactly. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about the impact of all this. CSR activity. Indian companies are increasingly aligning their efforts with the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, or as you might know them, the SDGs.
The SDGs, right? For our YouTube viewers who might not be familiar with those, can we give a quick rundown of what they're all about?
Of course! Think of the SDGs like a blueprint for a better world. They're a set of 17 goals adopted by the United Nations to tackle some of the biggest challenges facing our planet today. You know, things like poverty, hunger, climate change, and gender inequality. They're basically a roadmap to a more sustainable future for everyone.
So how are Indian companies using their CSR muscle to contribute to these global goals? Are they kind of picking and choosing what to focus on, or is there a clear pattern emerging?
Well, there are 3 SDGs that have clearly emerged as priorities for Indian companies: quality education, good health and well-being, and climate action. These areas have received the most significant chunks of CSR funding and are driving some pretty impressive positive change.
Give us some specifics. What kind of projects are we talking about here?
Okay, so for example, funding for education initiatives has skyrocketed by 65% over the past 5 years. That includes things like supporting schools, providing scholarships, and promoting vocational training. And then there's the environmental front. We've seen a whopping 71.38% jump in investments aimed at protecting the environment, animal welfare, and conserving resources. We're talking about reforestation, pollution control, wildlife protection, all that good stuff.
Those are some pretty amazing numbers. It really seems like these companies are thinking strategically about building a better future and aligning their efforts with these global goals. So let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Where exactly is all this money going?
All right, let's break it down. Ready for a deep dive into the top 5 areas attracting those CSR funds' YouTube crew?
Always. Hit me with it.
At the top of the list, we have education. This includes projects aimed at empowering people with disabilities and boosting livelihoods. This sector has seen some really impressive growth, especially in the last year, with a remarkable 53% surge.
Wow, that's incredible. It's clear that there's a strong commitment to empowering people and communities. What comes next?
Next up is health, specifically projects focused on tackling things like hunger, poverty, and malnutrition, and of course, initiatives aimed at providing safe drinking water and sanitation. These are some pretty basic needs, right? So it's great to see companies stepping up to address them.
Absolutely. I mean, addressing these basic needs is crucial for any kind of progress. But wait, I think you mentioned earlier that there was actually dip in funding post-COVID. What's the story there?
You've got a sharp eye. You're right. While this sector has seen a steady 57% climb over the 5 years, there was indeed a 14% dip after COVID. It definitely raises some interesting questions about how the pandemic might have shifted CSR priorities, perhaps even in the long term. It's something to keep an eye on for sure.
Yeah, definitely food for thought. It's a good reminder that even with positive trends, there are always going to be curveballs and complexities to navigate. All right, what's next on our list?
Well, next up we have environment, animal welfare, and resource conservation. This area has been a real star performer with a remarkable 71% increase over the past 5 years.
That's fantastic news, especially with the climate crisis being such a pressing issue. But hold on, I think you also mentioned a dip in funding here as well. What's going on with that?
You're right on the money. Even with all that amazing growth, there was a sharp decline in funding during the 2020-21 fiscal year. Most likely, this was a side effect of the pandemic and its impact on the economy. It's a tough reality check that even with the best intentions, external factors can sometimes throw a wrench in the plans.
So true. Right, what other areas made it onto the list?
Next in line is rural development projects. Now, interestingly, this sector has actually seen an 18% dip in funding. One possible explanation for this is that the government has been ramping up its spending in this area, so companies might feel like their CSR funds can be better used elsewhere.
I see, so it's kind of like a crowding out effect, right?
Yeah.
If the government is already investing heavily, companies might shift their focus.
Okay.
Okay, so what's the final area we're looking at?
And finally, we have the Prime Minister's National Relief Fund, or as it's better known, the PMNRF. Remember those massive donations that poured in during the pandemic?
Yeah, the PMNRF was all over the news back then.
Exactly. During that time, we saw a staggering 152% surge in donations to the PMNRF. It was primarily driven by the COVID-19 crisis. But since then, those donations have tapered down and are pretty much back to pre-pandemic levels.
So it seems like there was a big push for immediate relief efforts during the crisis, but now the focus is shifting back to longer-term development goals. Interesting how things evolve. Now let's zoom out a bit and look at the geographical spread of all these CSR initiatives. Where are these funds actually landing on the map?
Yeah, let's see where the action is. I'm super curious to know which states are benefiting the most from all these CSR projects. YouTube crew, get those maps ready.
All right, let's have a look. One state is a clear frontrunner, Maharashtra. They've been raking in a whopping 75% more CSR funding compared to the national average over the past 5 years.
Wow, Maharashtra is way ahead of the pack. What's driving that concentration of CSR activity in one state? It's likely a combination of factors. First off, a lot of those big corporate giants have their headquarters in Maharashtra, so naturally that makes it a hub for CSR activity. And second, the state has a really robust ecosystem of NGOs and social enterprises, so it's easier for companies to find partners who are aligned with their goals and who can help them put those CSR funds to good use.
So it's a mix of corporate presence and a solid infrastructure for social impact. Makes sense. But what about the other end of the spectrum? Are there any states that are lagging behind in terms of attracting CSR investment?
Unfortunately, yes. When we look at the bottom 10 states, they're mostly smaller union territories and states in the Northeast region.
That's a concerning disparity. What can be done to bridge that gap and ensure a more equitable distribution of CSR benefits across all of India? It seems like a really important piece of the puzzle.
You're absolutely right. That's a really important conversation and one that we should definitely dive into in another segment. But first, let's shift gears slightly. We've talked about where the money is going geographically, but now let's talk about how it's being used. Let's compare direct developmental investments to donations to government funds like the PMNRF.
Okay, so we're talking about the choice between a hands-on approach, actually funding specific projects directly, or contributing to government initiatives. What's the trend over the past 5 years? Are companies leaning one way or the other?
Well, it looks like companies are definitely leaning towards a more hands-on approach. Direct developmental projects have consistently received the lion's share of CSR funding over the past 5 years.
So it seems like companies are really looking for more control,
Sure.
more say in how their funds are being used, and maybe a more direct connection to the impact they're making.
Absolutely. It's about being actively involved in creating change, not just writing a check. Of course, as we saw with the PMNRF during COVID, there are times when supporting government initiatives makes perfect sense, especially in a crisis. It can be a quick and efficient way to provide much needed relief.
Right. Sometimes immediate action is key.
Hmm.
But even with that surge in donations to government funds during the pandemic, the overall trend really shows that companies are increasingly drawn to those direct developmental investments, where they can have a more hands-on role.
Yeah, that's a key takeaway from this deep dive for sure. Companies are stepping up, taking ownership, and becoming more invested in creating lasting impact. So let's shift gears a bit here and talk about the projects themselves. What kind of impact are these initiatives actually having on the ground?
Let's get into the nitty-gritty. For our YouTube viewers, this is where we get to see the real-world results of all those impressive figures we've been talking about.
We're seeing a surge in CSR projects across a wide range of areas: education, healthcare, environmental sustainability, rural development, you name it.
So let's zoom in on a few of these sectors and really explore some of the projects that are making a tangible difference. We already touched on the significant increase in CSR investments in education. What are some of the standout initiatives in this space?
Well, companies are really getting behind a wide range of projects, from building schools and funding scholarships to promoting digital literacy and providing vocational training. It's really all about empowering individuals with the knowledge and skills they need to create a brighter future for themselves.
It's about investing in human potential, not just for individuals, but for entire communities. Do you have any specific examples that really illustrate this impact?
Absolutely. One that comes to mind is the work that Company Name is doing in rural Rajasthan. They've introduced mobile computer labs that actually travel to remote villages. These labs are providing digital literacy training to children and adults who would otherwise have very limited access to technology.
That's incredible. Taking education on the road and bridging the digital divide, it's a fantastic way to open up opportunities in areas that might otherwise be left behind. It's like using innovation to reach those who need it the most.
Hmm.
What about healthcare? What are we seeing happening in that sector?
Oh, there's a lot going on in the healthcare space. Companies are supporting hospitals and clinics, funding mobile medical units that can reach remote communities, and tackling specific health challenges head on.
Can you give us a specific example of one of those initiatives?
Of course. Company Name partnered with a local NGO to launch a program that provides free eye checkups and cataract surgeries in rural Maharashtra. They've already screened thousands of people and restored vision to hundreds who were struggling with preventable blindness.
Wow, that's truly remarkable. It really highlights how CSR can make a profound difference in people's lives, sometimes in the simplest yet most impactful ways.
You're so right. And it's not just about providing healthcare. It's about tackling the root causes of health issues. Things like poverty, malnutrition, and lack of access to clean water and sanitation. These are all complex challenges that require a multi-pronged approach.
And that's where the focus on those SDGs really comes into play, right? It's about creating a holistic strategy for social impact and recognizing how these different issues are all interconnected.
Exactly. And this brings us to another really crucial area: environment, animal welfare, and resource conservation. With climate action being such a pressing global issue, what are Indian companies doing to contribute to a more sustainable future?
I know our YouTube viewers are definitely interested in this one. What are some of the green initiatives that are gaining traction?
We're seeing a real surge in projects focused on renewable energy waste management, water conservation, and reforestation. Companies are realizing that they have a responsibility to minimize their environmental footprint and contribute to a healthier planet.
It's not just an ethical imperative, it's also good business. Consumers are becoming more and more conscious of these issues, and they want to support companies that are aligned with their values.
Right. For example, Company Name has established a large-scale solar power plant in Gujarat. This is helping them reduce their reliance on fossil fuels and contribute to India's clean energy goals.
That's a great example of a company using its resources and expertise to make a tangible difference in the fight against climate change. Are there any smaller scale initiatives that have caught your eye? Sometimes those grassroots efforts can really spark some big changes.
Absolutely. Company Name has implemented a rainwater harvesting system at their factory in Karnataka. It's helping them reduce water consumption and replenish groundwater levels.
It's great to see companies integrating sustainability into their everyday operations, making it a part of the company culture. It's not just about grand gestures, it's about consistent action. So we've covered education, healthcare, and the environment. What about rural development? India has a vast rural population. What are companies doing to support these communities?
Well, even though we saw a slight dip in CSR spending specifically for rural development projects, Likely because the government is stepping up its efforts in this area, companies are still actively engaged in supporting rural communities.
What are some of the areas they're focusing on? What are the needs of these communities that CSR initiatives are addressing?
There's a wide range of projects happening. Companies are promoting sustainable agriculture, providing access to clean water and sanitation, supporting rural entrepreneurship, and creating livelihood opportunities. It's really all about empowering rural communities to thrive and contribute to India's overall growth.
It's about recognizing that sustainable development needs to reach every corner of the country,
Ah.
not just the urban centers. Do you have any examples of projects that have made a tangible difference in rural areas?
Yeah, for sure. Rural women in tailoring and embroidery skills. This gives them a source of income and financial independence, which is so important.
Fantastic. Empowering women, creating economic opportunities, fostering self-reliance in rural areas.
Yeah.
It's a win-win situation. But I have to ask, are these just isolated success stories? Or are we seeing a larger movement toward a more responsible and sustainable India? How do we ensure that these efforts aren't just random acts of kindness, but part of a bigger wave of change?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Scaling up the impact of CSR requires a few key ingredients, and I think collaboration is absolutely essential. We've already seen how partnerships between businesses, NGOs, government agencies, and local communities can really amplify the impact of these initiatives.
It's about bringing everyone to the table and leveraging those diverse perspectives and expertise to create a more holistic approach, recognizing that no single entity can solve these complex challenges alone.
You got it. And this collaboration needs to happen at all levels, from national policies to grassroots initiatives. Another crucial ingredient is innovation. We can't keep relying on old solutions to solve new problems. We need to be constantly exploring new technologies, business models, and creative approaches to tackle these social and environmental issues.
I like to think of it as hacking social impact. We need to be constantly evolving, adapting, and finding those new and innovative ways to maximize the impact of CSR.
Exactly. But it's also important to remember that all this innovation needs to be grounded in a deep understanding of the needs and aspirations of the communities we're trying to serve. It's not about imposing solutions, it's about co-creating them with the people who know their communities best.
So we've got collaboration and innovation. What else is needed to create this larger movement towards a more responsible and sustainable India?
I think transparency and accountability are absolutely essential. For CSR to really gain credibility and trust, companies need to be open about their initiatives, their impact, and even their challenges. It's not just about showcasing the successes, it's about being honest about the hurdles and sharing those lessons learned.
It's about moving beyond PR and showcasing real, measurable outcomes. Our YouTube viewers are a smart bunch. They can spot greenwashing a mile away.
Yeah.
Authenticity is key.
Totally. And this transparency needs to be backed by strong accountability mechanisms. Things like independent audits, robust monitoring and evaluation systems, and open communication channels. This will help ensure that CSR funds are being used effectively and ethically.
So we've got collaboration, innovation, and transparency. What's the final piece of the puzzle?
Honestly, I think the most crucial element is a shift in mindset.
Wow.
We need to move beyond seeing CSR as just a box to tick or a charitable donation. It's about integrating social and environmental responsibility into the very DNA of a business.
It's about recognizing that doing good is not just a nice to have, it's a must have. It's good for business, good for society, and good for the planet.
Exactly. And this shift needs to happen at every level, from the boardroom to the shop floor. It's about creating a culture where everyone understands and embraces the importance of social and environmental responsibility.
It's about moving beyond a top-down approach and empowering every employee to become an agent of change. It's inspiring to see how CSR in India is evolving, moving beyond charity towards a more transformative model.
It's a journey that's still unfolding, but the progress so far is incredibly encouraging, and it's a journey that we all have a role to play in. Whether you're a business leader, a policymaker, a consumer, or simply a concerned citizen, you can contribute to this movement.
Absolutely. For our YouTube viewers, remember, you have the power to choose. Support businesses that are aligned with your values. Speak out against injustice. Volunteer your time and skills. Every action, no matter how small, can ripple outward and create a positive impact.
Well said. And never underestimate the power of your voice. Speak up, share your thoughts, and be a part of the conversation. The future of CSR in India, and indeed the world, depends on collective action.
So true. Now, before we wrap up this segment, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the incredible work being done by countless individuals and organizations across India. They're the unsung heroes of this story.
Absolutely. They're the ones working tirelessly on the ground, often with very limited resources, to address some of the most pressing challenges facing our society.
They're the ones bringing these CSR initiatives to life, turning ideas into action and making a real difference in people's lives.
Yes.
Their stories deserve to be heard.
I couldn't agree more. In fact, why don't we dedicate our next deep dive to exploring some of those stories? Let's really shine a spotlight on the individuals and communities who are driving positive change at the grassroots level.
I'm totally on board. For our YouTube viewers, stay tuned for our next episode where we'll go even deeper. Explore those inspiring stories and uncover the hidden gems of CSR in action. It's going to be an incredible journey. All right, YouTube fam, we've crunched all the numbers, we've analyzed the trends, and now it's time to get real. It's time to dive into the heart of CSR and hear the stories that really bring this movement to life. You ready for this?
Absolutely. You know, we often get so caught up in the big picture, the strategies, the funding, the impact reports. But what really makes CSR meaningful are the personal stories, the human experiences behind all those numbers. Those are the stories that stay with you.
You're so right. It's about the lives changed, the communities transformed. That's where the magic happens. So let's hear it. Give us some of those stories that have really touched you.
Okay, close your eyes and imagine a remote village nestled in the foothills of the Himalayas. Access to education, especially for girls, is just a distant dream. But that's where company Name stepped in. They partnered with a local NGO to set up a residential school exclusively for girls. They're not just providing education, they're creating a safe and nurturing environment. It's about breaking down barriers and creating a pathway to a brighter future.
Wow, that's powerful. Creating opportunities where none existed? It's about empowering those who have been marginalized.
And the impact goes way beyond the girls themselves. It's actually shifting mindsets across the entire community. Parents who were once hesitant to send their daughters to school are now beaming with pride, seeing them thrive and reach for their dreams.
It's incredible how one initiative can spark such transformative change. It's like a ripple effect of empowerment spreading outward.
Okay, I'm ready for another story. Hit me.
Okay, this one takes us to the bustling streets of Mumbai Company. Name recognized the plight of street children who were so vulnerable to exploitation and abuse, so they decided to take action. They set up a mobile learning center. A mobile learning center. What's that?
Basically, picture a van. It's equipped with books, computers, educational games, you name it. And this van travels to different parts of the city, bringing education and a glimmer of hope to these children who might otherwise be forgotten.
Wow, that's amazing. Taking education to the streets, meeting those kids where they are, that's brilliant.
It's about recognizing that not everyone has equal access to opportunities and finding creative ways to bridge that gap. And it's not just about academics either. This mobile learning center provides these kids with a nutritious meal, a safe space to play, and connects them with healthcare services. It's a truly holistic approach to their well-being.
It's incredible how much impact one van can have, addressing both their immediate needs and their long-term potential.
It just goes to show that innovation and compassion can go hand in hand. And you know what? It's not just the beneficiaries of these initiatives who are transformed. The employees who are involved in these projects often report a profound sense of purpose and fulfillment. It creates a win-win situation for everyone.
Yes, it's about building a culture of empathy and social responsibility within companies, empowering employees to become agents of change in their own right. Now, as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Indian CSR, I have to ask, what are your final thoughts? Are you feeling hopeful about the future of this movement?
Hopeful. I'm inspired. We've seen the data, the strategies, the stories, and it's clear that CSR in India is evolving. It's becoming more strategic, more impactful, and more deeply ingrained in the fabric of businesses.
Yeah.
It's not just about philanthropy anymore. It's about creating a more just and sustainable future for everyone.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And for all of you tuning in on YouTube, remember that you don't have to be a CEO or a politician to make a difference. Every choice you make, every action you take has the power to create a ripple effect. Support businesses that are doing good. Volunteer your time and skills. Speak up for the causes you believe in.
That's right. It's about collective action. It's about recognizing that we all have a role to play in building the world we want to live in. So stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged. The future of CSR, and indeed, the future of our planet, depends on it.
So true. Well, that wraps up this episode of The Deep Dive. A huge thank you to our amazing YouTube audience for joining us on this journey. Keep those comments coming. We love hearing from you.
Absolutely. And until next time, keep diving deep, keep exploring, and keep making a difference. We'll see you all soon.